because I was thinking, well, if I can make payroll and I can make my house payment and I can have the lifestyle, everything's okay. And that particular conversation was so shocking. I said, WTF, right? I cannot tolerate it anymore. So the pain got to be real. It's not that the pain was bad or good. The pain got to be real. And then I got that terrible feeling in our stomach that you're laughing because you've had that same pain. And you just like, holy shit, I got to get my act together and I can't keep going the way I'm going.
Welcome to the New Talent Playbook Podcast, your go-to resource for building exceptional teams and thriving businesses. Each episode delivers actionable insights on harnessing offshore talent, integrating innovative technology, cultivating a vibrant company culture, and attracting and retaining top performers. Subscribe now to never miss an episode. For more resources, visit the newtalentplaybookpodcast.com, where you can download this episode's free workbook designed to help you apply today's insight to your business. And now, here's your host, Rob Levin.
Today, I'm joined by Karen Caplan, former CEO of Frieda's Specialty Produce. Her company introduced kiwi fruit and more than 200 new exotic produce items to American shoppers. After selling her company 3.5 years ago, she started an executive coaching and consulting company, working with company CEOs and leaders of companies from 10 million to 200 million in revenue. For more than 15 years, she's also been writing a blog, What's on Karen's Plate? As somebody who writes a blog, I can tell you 15 years is incredible. Karen, welcome to the New Talent Playbook, and let's dive right in.
Thank you. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Karen. So, Karen, you've spent 30 years as CEO of Frieda Specialty Produce and now coach executives. What are the common denominators with your experience that you notice about your CEO clients today?
So the common denominators I find are the same things that I experienced when I was running my company and I worked with a coach is they're so busy working in their business, they don't have a chance to work on their business. So they're just in the day-to-day. And when we start talking about vision and strategy and planning, they're like, I got busy. I didn't have time to work on that. So that's number one. Most of them don't have an outside sounding board. And so having an outside sounding board, someone who's not emotionally attached to what's going on in the business or the practices of the business is really helpful. And then finally, when you're the boss, unless you're part of a public company or you have investors, you don't really have anyone holding you accountable. So if you do what you say you're going to do, that's great. If you don't, no one's going to call you out on it. So those are the three areas that I find.
Of the three, which one is the biggest impediment to the company's growth?
Well, for sure, the first one. So working in their business, not on their business. And I have a new client that I met at a conference and I said that to him, you're so busy in your business, you're not working on the business. And we had one phone call and already he was very closed-minded to begin with. Already he's like, oh, I see the difference. Like, thank you. Well, someone on the outside can do that for you, right?
Right. That's where the sounding board certainly comes into play for sure. Because as somebody who I used to work in my own business, it's impossible to see what you're missing out by working in your business and not on your business. The sounding board goes a long way. You recently talked about this concept of you really have to want it.
Mm-hmm.
Business owners identify what they're actually committed, what changes they're committed to versus the ones they're just talking about.
In my blog, as you know, that I write every week, I actually told a little personal story about you have to really want it. And we were talking a couple of minutes ago, I broke my arm about 10 weeks ago. And I'm a golfer and I'm out and about all the time. And it was really devastating to be temporarily disabled. But I wanted it so bad that I wanted to be back to normal so I could move my arm. I'm not yet golfing. I had to really want it. And I worked really, really hard for this. I'm still working hard for that 10 weeks. And to me, that was like a business lesson that sometimes a business owner says, I really want to grow, or I want to get a great new team member, or whatever expansion plans they have, but they get distracted by the day-to-day, the urgent things, not the important things. And so when I say you really have to want it, it's that discipline that you have to, and a coach really does make a big difference in holding you accountable, but to have that discipline to do whatever it takes. So whether it's making a things to do list or a checklist or deadlines for what needs to get done when by yourself or by someone else, you have to really want it and have the discipline to stay focused on whatever the goal is. And so many times we're in our business working and we're making enough money and our employees aren't frustrating us too much. And, we're kind of happy with the status quo. And we may have big aspirations and big goals, but sometimes we forget about them because we really, really don't want it. We're satisfied with the status quo. And so that's the big shift that needs to happen. And I can just say from the clients that I work with that I'm going down the list. So last time, what did we talk about and how are we doing on that? And that accountability really makes a big difference.
Yeah. I've always felt, I'd love to know what you think about this. I've always felt that until the pain goes away, right? Or sorry, until the pain gets so extreme that the owner's like, all right, I know now's the time I'm going to finally do this, whatever this is. Until that pain gets extreme, they usually still stick to dealing with those urgent issues. Again, not those long-term important issues, which business owners actually are good at. Business owners don't go into a business unless they can think long-term because there's a lot of short-term suffering, and I'm kind of putting it mildly. In you working with maybe your personal experience as well as working with clients, what sometimes is that trigger for when that pain just gets to be too unbearing? Or is it the opposite of the pain? Is it that they finally see how good things can be that they go, all right, I'm going to finally do this thing?
Well, I'll just talk from my personal experience. This is quite a few years ago, but my company was losing money. So I had a 100,000 square foot warehouse. I had 150 employees. And we were losing money. We were in the fresh produce business, so it's really perishable. And I remember I had kind of gotten used to losing money, right? I'd put some money in. My sister would put some money in. At the time my mom was alive, she'd put some money in. And I remember my CPA saying to me, it's okay, just so you know, you're basically spending your inheritance. And that was shocking to me for him to say, right? Because I was thinking, well, if I can make payroll and I can make my house payment and I can have the lifestyle, everything's okay. And that particular conversation was so shocking. I said, WTF, right? I cannot tolerate it anymore. So the pain got to be real. It's not that the pain was bad or good. The pain got to be real. And then I got that terrible feeling in our stomach that you're laughing because you've had that same pain.
Yeah.
And you just like, holy shit, I got to get my act together and I can't keep going the way I'm going. And I think that having an outsider, so at the time it was my CPA, who was also like an advisor, saying that to me, my business partner wasn't going to say it to me. None of my employees are going to say it to me because I'm tolerating. As a business owner, we tolerate a lot, right? Because we have our own decent lifestyle that we're satisfied with. But having someone on the outside hold up that mirror and say, this is not a good idea. This is not working. But it's up to you. If you're satisfied with going down this road, you're fine. But having an outsider say that to me partially was a little embarrassing, honestly, because no one had ever said that to me. And then second, I'm like, shit, if it stays this way, there's only one way, and that's down and out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's such a powerful lesson. And again, I went through the same thing maybe a couple of times. And at the same time, I'm thinking about what you said earlier, which is, like you have a lot of people, they don't have that threat. It's not the threat that's the problem. It's that the fact that maybe they have a business that is making money, right? Mm-hmm. And they're comfortable, right? They're paying all the bills. They got a nice car, nice house, kids' schools paid for and all of that stuff. But yet they're still doing something that they shouldn't be doing. I think in a sense, that's a little bit harder for those people to come around. And what I occasionally have come to, this doesn't apply to all of those situations, is that sometimes you have to grow. Otherwise, you're at the risk of actually shrinking, or you have to do something difficult. And I think a lot of business owners are going to be facing that choice in the next few years with AI.
And this used to happen to me. Yeah. Everything's going great. All the customers are happy. And it's like, don't jinx it. That's what I would always say to myself. Don't even say that out loud because literally something's going to go wrong. But so back in my day of running my business with fresh produce, I always thought about my competition. But today, a business owner can say things are great now, but what if someone literally builds a better mousetrap, right? Can find a way to do it the same level of service or better, faster, cheaper, smarter. And if it was easy being an entrepreneur, having a business, everyone would do it successfully and easily. And it's not. Right? It's a challenge. And sometimes I remember, gosh, this was so many years ago. I remember this lady, her name was Gilda Marks. She was one of the first women in the fitness clothing business. And she had a $40 million company. I remember it very distinctly. And she turned to the audience, who was mostly women, and said, I know you think as your business gets bigger, it just gets easier. She said, but I want you to know when your business gets bigger, the problems get bigger. So some of us look at other company business owners, operators, and say, gosh, they have it so good.
Yeah.
Right? They make it look so easy. And that's totally a facade because it's the same for all of us. All of us have the same challenges. And frankly, you always have to be looking behind you to see, is a competitor, is AI a tool, is something's chasing you.
I couldn't agree more. And I think because of AI, in most businesses, there will be something chasing you, and it's going to happen very, very quickly. That's why I'm encouraging business owners myself. I'm personally encouraging business owners not only to say, all right, I'm open to AI, but to actually build something with AI, because my belief is it's only when you do that that you actually see what's coming and what's possible.
I saw I think it was your last podcast. I looked at it over the weekend, and the guy you had, I forget his name.
Was that Alan Pence?
Alan, yes.
Yeah.
Building a Claude co-work, something or other, as a coach and consultant to business owners, even though I don't have my own business with assets and product and employees, because I can't talk about AI unless I use it myself. So I do use it myself. And frankly, I'm shocked at how many business owners are sitting on the sidelines. And, I wrote a blog about this, sitting on the sidelines, waiting to understand it better, have someone on their staff that can do it. And they make all these excuses. And those are just like working in the business, not on the business. And literally you need to grab your nose and jump off the diving board and go for a swim.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a good segue into another blog post that you had that really caught my eye. They all catch my eye, but this one, I just love the point of view on this, which was why you should say yes. Do you see CEOs, business owners, often not saying yes, and when in times that they should?
So when I referred to saying yes, it was an opportunity that was given to someone, actually to 3 people, and 2 people said absolutely, and one person said, I'm so busy. I'm too busy to help someone else right now. And I equate that to the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And so if you're a growth mindset person, any opportunity you see or anything that comes up in front of you, you see as an opportunity. You say to yourself, how can I make that work? How can I fit that in? What can I do with that? But someone with a fixed mindset has all the excuses of I don't have time, it's not going to have a positive ROI, or it's not my priority right now. And so they don't say yes. And they have all these excuses. And I think that especially today, 2026, you should be more open to saying yes when someone asks you for something, because there will be an ROI of some sort, right? So for example, this week, I'm getting on a plane to go to London on Friday at 6:00 in the afternoon, but at 12, I'm speaking at a local university to some students who are going to be graduating. And frankly, if anyone doesn't have time, it's me on my way to, Los Angeles airport. And I thought, no, you know what? I want to help these students. I want to share my wisdom and some thoughts. And actually, I have a call with them right after we finish today so that I can hear from them. What would they like to hear as they're getting ready to graduate? So I could have said, no, I don't have time. But the reason I said yes is I know something fantastic is going to come from it. I might find someone that I can refer to be an intern. I might make a connection with someone that works at Forbes magazine, which happened to be on an airplane once when I met a young girl flying. It turns out her dad ran Forbes. And so it's always worth it to say yes when someone asks you something. You may delay when you invest the time on it because of the schedule. Mm-hmm. But too many times I hear business owners, and they're, on their way out the door as far as I'm concerned, saying, I don't have time for that. I don't handle that. That's not in my purview. And I think they're really missing out.
I think they're missing out not only for all the reasons you said that something might come around. I think there's an opportunity to pay it forward. Simple as that. And I think as business owners, we're in a very unique position to do that on a number of different fronts.
So we were talking about AI a minute ago. I wasn't using Chat or Claude or anyone at the time, and a colleague of mine was visiting, and he said, I can't believe you're not using it. And I had all my reasons why, right? I'm not really technical. I don't have time. I'm so busy doing whatever. And he said, well, I'll coach you. That's what I do for a living now. And instead of saying, no, I'll figure it out on my own, I said, okay. So we trade services. So he gets coaching from me and my partner, and I get coaching from him on AI because I said yes. I could have just blown him off.
Yeah.
So, which is a great example for the people that are listening to this podcast is how can you make something happen, right? Instead of saying no, say to yourself, how can I make that work?
Yeah. And again, probably not what you were originally conveying, but also to me, this is a way to keep that growth mindset muscle going, which is just to do different things, stepping out of your comfort zone. And personally, sometimes if I have a choice between working on a problem in my own business or helping somebody with theirs, I rather
help him someone else.
I don't know
why. Of course
why.
you would.
Yeah. I just love to do that.
The reviews are in, and leaders are calling Rob Levin's new book a game changer. The New Talent Playbook, the ultimate guide to building your dream team, is now available, and it's your roadmap to winning the war for talent and scaling with total confidence. Don't just take our word for it. Order your copy today and see why it's a must-read for every SMB leader. Find it on Amazon.com or learn more at thenewtalentplaybook.com.
I want to switch gears for a second. I want to talk about performance reviews, which nobody seems to like. And I know you in particular are not a fan of annual reviews. Tell us a little bit what's behind that.
So, I have many years of experience of performance reviews and the various cycles of managers that work for me during my career. And they all come in and like you said, everyone dreads them. So I had to kind of wrap my head around what the purpose of a performance review is. And some people see themselves, if they're the boss, like, well, I'm judging, right? I'm judging someone. And the employee really needs a coach, right? And so the shift I've seen, because it's been a shift over the last decade or two, is that the once a year performance review is out the door. And I would say this to my managers, look, you're sitting down and we design so many different forms, which at the end of the day, I think we don't need all those fancy forms. But the forms were all about how did you do and you're rating everyone for 12 months. But you know as well as I do when you're doing an annual performance review, like what they did last night is top of mind, or last week, or the thing they screwed up on. And the employee, when they're walking in, they're only interested in one thing.
Yeah, how much is my rate?
Right? Yeah. So the manager's saying, I want to talk about your performance. And in the head of the employee, it's always, am I going to get a raise or not? So I would coach my managers on how to deal with that situation, which was be upfront about that when you sit down with someone on the performance review, that we're here to talk about performance and we're going to talk about your compensation now or later or whatever it's going to be. But what I've learned is that the model of an annual performance review is not really very useful. And so I prefer and recommend the cadence depends on the company and the size of the team. But at least sitting down with every one of your direct reports, if they're even called direct reports anymore, every couple weeks, one-to-one. I always like to have the people that work for me drive the agenda. So it's not really an update session. It's like, how can I help them be more successful? And by doing it every couple of weeks, sometimes when you're working on projects, it might be every week. But if you're doing it every couple weeks, you're not letting things fester. You're not letting those performance issues that are in the back of your head, or you keep a file. That was my favorite. I had someone who kept a file on everything for a whole year. I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you not stop and say to your employee, hey, like you're going in the wrong direction on this project, or the way you were working on a team wasn't really effective. Let's talk about how you can be more effective. But I kind of come up with, and I think you referred to this in my blog, is what questions could we as a manager ask our employee that would make them feel like they're valued, they're important, I hear them, and I can help them, right? So I came up with some questions that I like to use. So, and I always like to start with the good, right? So if I was to sit down with a direct report, I'd ask them first question. So what's working well right now for you? And then I always have a pen and I always have paper. I'm not doing it on a laptop because they could think you're working on your email or you're taking notes of something else. So I go old school, write it down. So what's working right now? I might ask them some clarifying questions. I ask them where they're feeling stuck or frustrated. So like, what's frustrating you right now? And there could be something that is holding them back that you don't even know about, but by you asking like, what's frustrating you right now? You could eliminate that frustration easily because you asked them and you could have a conversation. And I share these questions kind of as a framework, But I don't think people should stick to like, I'm only going to ask you these 4 questions and I'm going to give you a rating 1 through 4. It's a way to be a coach versus a judge. The next thing is, what support do you need from me right now? Is there anything holding you back? Anything, whether it's resources or time or additional references? And then, because I think being in a constant state of learning is so important, it's like, what are you learning right now? So it's really engaging in a conversation. And by asking people open-ended questions and showing genuine interest, like looking at them in the eyes, right? And nodding and taking notes and saying, did I get this right? I think this is really good. I think I'm going to use this with someone else. It validates the person. And someone working for you is going to work so much harder for you in the company because when they feel valued.
Yeah, feel valued and appreciated. It sounds so obvious, of course, once we say it, right?
Business owners in general would have control over this process if they want to. Okay, but some companies, and I say this respectfully to anyone in the HR function, is that they have an HR department. And sometimes the HR department is like the prevention department, as far as I'm concerned. They've got every single excuse and roadblock to productivity and positivity, right? So sometimes if someone's watching this podcast and they aren't in control of their own destiny in terms of performance reviews, it might be a challenge. But I think that when you're a business owner, you get to decide the culture and feel you want to have with your business. And part of the way to do that is how you interact with the people that work in your enterprise. And this is a little bit different than when I ran my company. So, 2020 hindsight, or hindsight's always 2020, is now that I look back on it, I realize that the focus I had on process and consistency within the company, so it was done identically across all the different functions of the company, might have been pushing us in the wrong direction versus being a little bit more flexible and responsive to the needs of the employees.
Yeah, I want to double down on something that you said. I'll kind of rephrase it a little bit, and hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, but culture is not an HR function. Culture is a CEO function. And Peter Drucker said, and I believe this, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So really, the 2 biggest things a CEO need to do, maybe there's a third one, is establish the culture and make sure that it's being lived. Now, HR can help you with that once you've established it, for sure. And as the CEO, you need to set the strategy and communicate it. The third thing might be making sure that everybody has the right resources, which you got to as well. But culture should be on the top of every CEO's list. And I don't think it is. Let me say every business owner's list, for sure.
So I remember being in a strategy session. My business coach also helped me do strategy planning in my company. And I remember talking about the culture of the company and someone in our group asking, well, like, how do you change the culture of the company if you don't like it? And I found his answer was so fascinating. You change your culture with every person you hire, every new person you hire. So I always kept that in mind. So, someone quits or I'm opening a new position, I'm going to completely change the dynamics of my company with my next single hire. Doesn't matter what level they're at. Of course, some levels are more impactful, but the way to change strategy is by who you bring into the company. And then, of course, walking the talk, right? So if you say that doing what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it, when you say you're going to do it, if that's part of the culture of your company, or curiosity is part of the culture of your company, but you don't do it yourself, you're sending a mixed message.
100%. Everybody's looking at you. And not only that, it could actually be worse, because if you're saying one thing and doing another, you're actually creating some damage in the company. You're going in the wrong direction.
And we all know people that have done that, right?
And I've done that. I'll admit it. I've done it in previous companies. I hope I'm not doing it here. I don't think I am, but here being Work Better Now. You mentioned this idea of coaches. The business owners listening to this conversation right now. All right, what Karen's saying makes a lot of sense. What are like the 1 or 2 things to make that shift to becoming more of a coach in the company?
I would ask questions, number 1. So those 4 questions I gave you: what's working well right now? Where are you feeling stuck or frustrated? What support do you need from me? What are you learning? To ask those questions and pay attention to what people say. The second thing is that, assuming you have a leadership team, is you got to have your leadership team on the same page as you. So there's nothing worse, or some people have a business partner that handles the different part of the company. You have to be aligned. If you're not aligned, the employees sit back and they're looking, they're going, okay, he's going to go in the other room. I'm going to wait for this other guy to come. He's going to change everything, right? You got to be on the same page. And then you have to be consistent. So if you go through the process of asking people, of setting up biweekly meetings, and maybe it could be once a month or once every 3 weeks. It really doesn't matter, just as long as a consistent cadence is, don't miss those meetings and listen to what they told you. And if you say you're going to take action on something, take action on it. But I think so many of us fall back into, they'll go right back to the beginning of our conversation. They're so busy working in their business, they don't work on their business. So this is working on the business, right? Because you're elevating the relationships you have as a leader with the people in your company. You're focused on how the culture can impact performance, but you can't go back. If you go back, you're just sending a really bad message to the people in your company.
Yeah.
And then it's a little bit self-serving to say this, it's really hard to do it on your own. I will say I had a business coach for 7 years. It was someone from my CEO peer group that ended up becoming a coach. And I just thought he was really smart, asked great questions, and he'd sat in my seat, right? He'd run a company, he'd run public companies, private companies. So I knew he had experience. Is having an outsider there who is not sucked into the day-to-day, but they have a list of what you talked about last time, and they're like checking in and how you doing, that accountability piece. And someone who brings a different perspective, an outside perspective, it really makes a big difference. And then what I found using a coach is to do role playing. And I do that oftentimes with some of my clients where they're like, I don't know how to do that. I go, well, let's practice. And what do you mean, let's practice? Well, let's role play or role practice right now. So I'll be you and you be the leader, the manager, your employee, your vendor, your customer, whoever it is. And you throw everything you can at me that you know that they're going to say that you're afraid of. And I'll pretty calmly, handle that. And we'll dissect it afterwards. And having that ability to role practice with an outsider on a regular basis can really make a big difference. And I will tell you, I've done that a lot with clients, especially when they're having to move people outside the company or elevate some people to different positions or take a different growth strategy. You need someone to help you run through that.
Yeah. And I want to thank you for that. I want to come back to something you said, because it's just very, very subtle. It really stuck out to me when I asked you, like, how does somebody become a coach? And it's simply shifting from just starting to talk. Just because you're the senior person doesn't mean you should be doing all the talking, to just asking some questions. You articulated 4 questions, which have worked very well for you. Karen, this has been an awesome discussion. If people want to find out more about you or want to get in touch, what's the best way to do that?
They can go to my website. So it's my name, KarenCaplan.com. And on there, you can find my blog. You can set up an appointment with me. I'm pretty sure my email's on there when you set an appointment. And something fun, if you like fruits and vegetables and want to know how the kiwi fruit happened to come to America, there's a documentary movie made about my family, my mom, and my business called Fear No Fruit. And it's actually housed on my website. And I always love people to see that, because that's what taught me the passion in my business, as I work with my mom, my sister, and my daughter. And then we had the fun of introducing exotic produce to American consumers. And I learned a lot of lessons doing that, as you can well imagine, with perishable produce.
Yeah, right. That's a challenging business. Karen, thanks so much for that. And by the way, if you want to check out Karen's website, it's Karen with a K, Caplan with a C. Karen, yes. Thanks again for hopping on the show and sharing your insights.
Thank you, Rob.
Thanks for listening. The New Talent Playbook podcast is brought to you by Work Better Now. Don't forget to review, subscribe, and download the workbook for this episode at the link below. If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on LinkedIn at the New Talent Playbook Podcast or visit thenewtalentplaybookpodcast.com.